Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America, where each episode we bring you a brand new interview with one of the film industry's top directors, conducted by one of their peers. Remember to subscribe to our podcast on Google Play Music, iTunes, Stitcher, or on our SoundCloud page at soundcloud.com/thedirectorscut. This episode takes us behind the scenes of director Damien Chazelle's new original movie musical, La La Land. Set in modern-day Los Angeles, the film explores the themes of life, love, and the difficulties of pursuing your dreams through the tale of an aspiring actress and a jazz musician. Played by Emma Stone and Ryan Gosling, the two embark on a whirlwind romance as they struggle to make ends meet and find success in a city known for crushing hopes and breaking hearts. In addition to La La Land, Mr. Chazelle's credits include the feature films Guy and Madeline on a Park Bench and Whiplash, which received Academy Awards for Best Supporting Actor, Best Film Editing, and Best Sound Mixing in 2015. Whiplash also garnered Mr. Chazelle Oscar nominations for Best Adapted Screenplay and Best Picture. Following a recent screening of La La Land at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Mr. Chazelle spoke about the joys and challenges of making the film with director Jon Favreau. Listen on as Mr. Chazelle discusses how he made the city of Los Angeles its own character in the film, how he shot the film's opening dance sequence on one of LA's busiest highways, and how he worked to pay homage to the classic Hollywood movie musicals while still updating La La Land for a modern context and audience.
You're too kind. Thank you.
Looks like they liked it, huh?
Thank you so much. This is, wow, I've always dreamed of showing in this theater. This is, look, it's so cool. Anyway.
Where to start? This is the second time I saw it, and they tapped me on the shoulder with like 5 minutes left in the last montage. I'll try not. This is going to be podcasted, so I'll be very careful about spoilers because I don't want to ruin the experience for anybody. But it was 5 minutes left. It was the montage. They tapped me on the shoulder. Says it's 5 minutes left. Would you like to leave now? And I was just shooing them away. I was like fighting tears streaming down my cheeks. So powerful, and also I had seen it at home, and now it's my first time seeing it with a crowd. And boy, doesn't it make you feel like this is still a relevant medium to be in a theater like this, watching it all together. A movie like this, because much like the music in the film, I think it's the communal experience of sharing it with the people around you, even though you're all quiet. There's an energy that takes the room over, especially something like this. And much like music, there's a line in here that I think John Legend says, which is, jazz is about the future. It's not about the past. He implies that Ryan Gosling's character is too nostalgic. But the tone of this film and the balance of the old and the new, to me, is what is truly surprising. And I'd love for you to speak a little bit about the way that you deal with that. Clearly, you put those lines in his mouth. Is that something you feel? Where do you weigh in on cinema and the balance of being of the old and the new?
I mean, I have. I think like that scene you're referring to is definitely sort of a debate I've had in my head. During much of my life, and not necessarily about jazz, but about movies in general, But I am a jazz lover, and I obviously, love movies, and I grew up loving movies. I love musicals, so I was from a somewhat, early point in my, teen years, was kind of aware that I was somewhat, in certain ways, anachronistic, like down to, I played drums as a teenager mainly. Those were my kind of chief drumming.
You should make a movie about that.
That's an idea, yeah. But very quickly, the drummers I became obsessed with were the drummers from the 30s and 40s and 50s, and for whatever reason, I had this book about jazz drummers of that era, and I tried to like like buy old drum kit heads and like tilt my snare drum and try to make my kit look like an old kit. And so I kind of like, now I don't play music as much anymore, but I guess I've known that about myself, that I have that sort of tendency to have what you'd call old-fashioned tastes, and so it's that sort of it's that challenge a little bit, isn't it? You know, where you want to preserve what you grew up loving, you want to preserve what inspired you to kind of go into whatever field it is, but you know you're not actually helping that field unless you push it forward in some way. You know, I think there is that sort of give or take, and I think musicals, certainly here, the musicals once again that I loved the most were musicals of the 30s, 40s, 50s. You know, and some of the French New Wave musicals of the 60s. But that was the era that I really wanted to kind of embrace and dive into, but I wanted to also make it feel relevant and modern and about my life or any of our lives in LA today. So it was constantly being aware of that sort of balance and knowing that you know I had to make sure I didn't slip too far into and I
think it doesn't feel like this could have been cracked out of a time capsule. It definitely feels of the moment, which I think is what makes it so interesting for me and for any of the directors out here. The tools that you used a lot of classic tools, I was surprised we had spoken earlier about, because I'm trying to figure out the visual effects, and there's really not a lot of them. There's a lot of very old techniques here, which I found very interesting. You're using lighting and music and editing and the way you covered scenes, and of course the color palette. It's wonderful to show how many tools are actually at a director's disposal, because these aren't often used to the extent that you've used them here. And then there's a lot of nods of the tips of the hat to old music, but also to old movies. Was that something that you planned to begin with? I mean, I caught, maybe I'm wrong, but I think Marilyn Monroe's dress, the blue dress, was the same cut that Marilyn Monroe was wearing, and I saw the Vertigo green in the apartment scene, and there were a lot of things that, for a film fan, there's a lot of little Easter eggs in there that had tremendous effect to the way you watch the film. At what point did you lay those references in and the coverage?
I mean, I guess those would sort of, for the most part, those were just sort of ideas that would emerge, you know, as we were prepping or as I was collaborating with, you know, the crew or as we were shooting. From the outset, it was more just, you know, knowing that I wanted the movie to have a little bit of that Hall of Mirrors kind of feeling, where you know, like there's someone who and I completely forget who, but some critic or historian at some point wrote about Casablanca, you know, making a case for it as a great film, obviously, talking about how, you know, it's the kind of movie that we sort of look at and think of, maybe because it's also become so sort of part of the culture, and in some ways you could argue it's become ossified as a result, that you look at it and you see a lot of conventions or cliches or tropes, whatever you want to call it, whatever word you want to use, but that there's something about that movie specifically where you feel like they're all talking to each other. Mm-hmm. You feel like it's a movie where somehow the cliches stop being cliches because they're engaged with each other, and there's some kind of beauty there.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's so much of it feels improvisational. Clearly there's tremendous chemistry in your cast, not to mention how talented they are, dancing, singing, all of those things, which feels like a bit of a throwback to people who were trained in the studio system to have that full array of talents where they can jump from one genre to the other. Here it happens within the film. And so what's curious to me is that it's all, you know, you talk about the improvisation of jazz, and certainly in filmmaking there's opportunity for that. But if you look at your camera work, you know, for example, the way the long single takes and single shots in his apartment in the beginning, and then breaking it down into coverage, the color palette changing, that's all very deliberate. That's all planned. And so you seem to follow more in the tradition of like Hitchcock, where you're actually planning everything. Do you do it through storyboards? Is it through conversation? Talk to me about your process of what led to what we saw here.
I mean, you know, it starts initially with just so I mean, in this case, really the very beginning, other than the spine of the story, was a lot of the music. You know, so as I was actually fleshing out the story and writing the script, Justin Hurwitz, my composer, was already writing score melodies, and those were, informing visual ideas I had. I was describing to him how I wanted certain things to feel visually that would inspire him. And what resulted in that was a very visually descriptive script, which on the writing side of my end, I often get for. It's how endless descriptions in my script.
So how long of a script page-wise was this?
Well, it wasn't super long. It was 100 pages or something, but it was you imagine a scene like the end, there's not a lot of dialogue. There's no dialogue. So so I just wanted to try to kind of give you, reading it, wanted to give you the feeling of actually seeing it as I was writing it. So
if I were to read your script, it would say each shot that would follow and and you would understand at that point what the music was as you rewrote it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So that would, and so to an extent, the broad strokes at least, you would kind of get a sense of that. And then from that, then I would start storyboarding. I started by storyboarding the musical numbers. And then my DP, Lena Sandgren, got involved, and we...
What a fantastic job.
Yeah, I mean,
cinematographer did.
He's absolute.
And as we were discussing, the whole DGA crew, I mean, what great ADs you must have had on a film of this size.
I was beyond lucky. Peter Cohn and his entire team. It was just, I mean, you can imagine watching this movie is sort of I feel like an AD's nightmare.
Speaking of which, that opening number on the freeway, I'm trying to look at how did you? Well, yes, let's hear it for that too. That's it. It got a nice round of applause after it played as well it deserved. But when we spoke, I was like, but that's a lot of green screen you must have used. And you explained that wasn't the case. Could you talk about a case study, that scene in particular? What was it?
Yeah. So that was I mean, I wanted it to be, to be like pretty much the entire movie shot in a real location. And the idea was to do this movie in such a way that you would set numbers that normally would have been done on soundstage environments, or at least in the older musicals we were drawing from, but set them this time in real LA, but almost try to make it look fake, if that makes sense.
With the car colors and the
so in that case,
costumes.
It would be coordinating the car colors. In the case of the, some of the dance numbers at night, it would be shooting it, within that half-hour window where the sun is just setting and it looks like green screen.
Wait, so you really shot? First of all, you really shot that freeway scene on a freeway. You were able to shut down a piece of highway, and now you're telling me that that dance number on Mulholland was actually done at Magic Hour?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And as you know, Magic Hour lasts, it's not an hour, it's misleading. It lasts about 10 or 12 minutes, right? So you had to shoot that whole dance number in probably about 20 minutes then.
Well, to be fair, so yeah, I guess I'll jump back to the traffic number in a second, but because this is funny, the Magic Hour thing, it's to be fair, yeah, so you get maybe half an hour. Now, we kind of, by that point, knew, Ryan and Emma had been rehearsing a lot. We kind of knew where they would hit their sweet spot. It wouldn't be take one. It maybe would be take three.
Right.
Take 3 and 4 would be, so we'd kind of time it to try to line up. We would start shooting a little before the sun is quite where we actually want it, but just
I'm sweating just hearing you explain this.
And you just kind of hope that your best take for them lines up with the best take for the sun, because you can't really.
Of course.
I can yell at Ryan and Emma. I can't yell at the sun. So so we so that number we went on. Ryan and Emma had rehearsed for months leading up to that, but we got on set and in the morning or late morning and started rehearsing the camera move, and getting that shot, which is on crane, exactly to where it needed to be, first with our dance doubles, then with Ryan and Emma, and then it's like it feels like a race where suddenly it's like Linus would be standing there kind of almost like, yes, it's about to be a perfect color, and then he runs to the camera and go, and we start shooting, and it's a 6-minute shot, so you only have like 4 or 5 takes to do, and so we went back there the next night. I think the take in the movie is take 3 of the second night. So I'm glad we had the second night. But it was kind of like that. We didn't have that problem, obviously, with the traffic number. We had full days. But there, it's an easy pass ramp, so you can't shut it down ad infinitum, So we had a weekend, basically, to go on there and fill it with cars. And that's where that I think even more so than the hilltop dance, which was, you know, timing very difficult, but at least a limited number of elements. The freeway, again, I really have to sort of give it up for Peter Cohn and for his entire team, as well as for the teamsters, the production designer, just the logistics behind kind of getting those cars all in place and camera equipment all in place and people all in place in time, you know, so we all show up there where it's still dark, so that we can be rehearsing as soon as it's dawn, shooting as soon as the light is actually kind of decent,
right.
And dealing with the safety concerns. It was a heat wave, dealing with any of the number of things that just can go wrong when you're in a real environment, but obviously making it look fun on screen.
Sure, and it was invisible in the audience. It feels like a dream, and that's really a testament to being able to have it so that we weren't aware of any of that, and I assumed it was done in a controlled environment. And also, how wonderful to do a film like this in Los Angeles. What a love letter to the city, and what a wonderful,
That was wonderful. It was crazy to me, actually, to the extent to which, because I didn't have as much of a frame of reference, not having shot, films in the city for that long, the extent to which, crew members had literally never, or not at least in decades, shot a film in LA. And these are, obviously for the most part, crew members who live in LA,
right.
And so the idea of actually shooting in their city, and it's not to say we didn't have the ideas.
What was it? Okay, let me hear. So it's called La La Land, and they wanted to shoot
Santiago was Chile was presented. There was actually the most realistic sounding one, which still made me want to throw up. But was the idea of a limited, like a week or something, of run and gun exteriors in LA, and then we shoot all the interiors and try to make it as much interior as possible in
another city,
Toronto or something.
Well, it's nice that there's a bit of a resurgence in Los Angeles production, which I think it's wonderful for the tradition of this town, but it's also wonderful for what it offers creatively, because it's it's cliche to say, but it is such a character in this. And it's interesting that for me in particular, it was very striking because 20 years ago I'm on the same locations when I'm doing my early work with Swingers.
Yeah.
And then LA Story came before that, and you look at like a documentary like LA Plays Itself, and you see all of these locations that you have in there with Angel's Flight and of course the observatory. It was so carefully curated that anybody who loves movies, what you benefit from is that each little visual reference unleashes all of this emotional connection to what preceded it. And here are these characters who are once again living out the dream of coming to California to chase down the thing that they find their passion within, and to be able to tell that story again in a way that feels so fresh and so surprising and so emotionally engaging, I think is a real testament to your skill and of course the cast, which I would be remiss not to talk about. Clearly a tremendous talent, tremendous chemistry. And how did you arrive at your leads? I know they've worked together before. How did you end up engaging them?
It was luck, really, because in the sense that it actually wound up, in their laps at the time that it did. Because back when I was first writing this would have been 2010, 2011. I had my kind of pie in the sky idea of, wouldn't this be great for Ryan and Emma together? It was right about the time that Crazy Stupid Love had just come out. So the idea of them as a couple was and they were younger back then. And actually the characters, when I first wrote them, were a little younger. And then 6 years went by of trying to get the movie off the ground. And it just kind of never occurred to me, realistically, that the road would ever lead back to Ryan and Emma at a certain point. But I wound up meeting them, in person, almost by happenstance in the wake of Whiplash, when we were kind of, I was sort of doing the circuit on that, while Emma was doing Birdman, and Emma was also doing Cabaret on Broadway. So she was in a musical state of mind. I got her the script. Independently, I also at a certain point got Ryan the script. and this idea of not just them individually, but them kind of returning as a pair,
which is very
became to
traditional
emerge.
Hollywood too.
Yeah.
And then the coverage too reminded me that head to toe dance coverage. I mean, that's
right.
In and of itself is.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, I mean, you have to. One thing I love about that we do kind of lose a little bit, I think, in or that we've lost a little bit in a lot of cinema is that idea of how much you can tell with the full body. If you look at Chaplin, or obviously you look at Fred and Ginger, you look at the great musicals of the 50s as well, you see full body movement. Obviously you see dancing from head to toe, but you also see what blocking can do and what the actual arrangement of bodies in space, as opposed to just relying on editing to tell that story. That the fact that you can say a lot emotionally by the fact of someone being in the foreground and moving to the background, or someone being left of frame, moving to right of frame. That whole idea that used to be absolutely elemental, and you see it, is the building block of all the great Hollywood filmmakers like Preminger and Vincent Minnelli and Stanley Donen and Hitchcock, is kind of it's not as integral to how we make films anymore. I say this having made Whiplash, which doesn't use any of that. It's a completely edited movie, so I'm,
but each story has
each
its
story
own
requires its own.
set
And
of tools.
for this, it really felt to me like this was a movie that needed to kind of breathe in a way that Whiplash didn't. This was a movie where, it needed to kind of allow that sort of fluidity of movement, and that means you need actors who can actually sustain those kind of shots and those kind of wide angles. And Ryan and Emma are able to, again, act with not just their faces, but with their entire physique in a way that's really, whether they're dancing or not, that I just find extraordinary.
I think it clearly came across and just synergized with your vision and really made it wonderful. As I said, standing up to multiple viewings, I was swept away with it the first time, and now this time I've watched it, I'm really starting to see all the little things which honestly is really a testament to the film, that you stop watching it as though it's something you do, and you feel like just an audience member, like how I felt when I first would go to the movies, and made me fall in love with it. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind, that this is something that ultimately, with all these technical aspects, has to be something that ultimately makes the audience feel and sweeps them away. And especially here, you're introducing a language that to many of us is familiar, but as you bring it out to new audiences who've never been exposed to the classics that influence you, how do you find that it plays to crowds of people who might not be as film savvy? Have you had that experience yet?
I mean, we've had a wonderful experience of just bringing the movie out to the world, through festivals, and through kind of screenings in various cities around the country or the world. And it's been, it is that weird thing, where a movie that for so long has been this sort of, felt like this little kind of personal, almost private sort of thing, that you share with the people that you made the movie with, but not really beyond that. Then becomes something that's, hopefully you hope bigger than you, that takes on a life that's not just your own. So I never knew whether this would remain just a private thing or whether it would.
Well, now that it's hitting the world, how are you feeling that?
No, I am feeling it connecting, and I'm feeling, and I guess, one of the nicest things is feeling it connecting, to different ages and different.
Well, I know my 13-year-old daughter, I saw it with her, and then she wanted to come tonight and bring a friend as well.
Right, so I love that. That's my favorite thing ever.
To me, it is wonderful, because what it means is that, much like with the jazz that you talk about,
right,
it's about passing the passion down and the appreciation. And first, you have to show them a good version of it. As you say about, Emma's character here, didn't think she liked jazz because the jazz she heard was not what Ryan's character would consider jazz. And then when you hear good jazz, you begin proselytizing, and then the traditions carry on. And I think that's part of I think what's important about what you do.
And I think that like musicals get a bad rap sometimes, like jazz does. There's certain kind of these art forms that, for whatever reason, I don't know, have developed like a perception in many people's minds of what they have to be, and sometimes all you have to do is just kind of convince them, oh, it doesn't have to be that, you know, or it can be accessible in a way that you didn't think it could be. I was always very, you know, cognizant and hopeful with this movie that it wouldn't just be, you know, a movie that only I would kind of enjoy.
Well, you
because
never
I enjoy
know.
the
It's,
musicals.
again, like the characters speak about here, you kind of have to make it something you feel excited about. That's your best shot at everybody else getting excited too. And I think, look, anytime somebody takes a chance like this and does something that clearly doesn't pitch as something that's people are necessarily comfortable with because there's other movies like it,
Yeah.
and you take that chance and you throw your heart into it, and then it gets so well received. It's, to me, it's inspiring, and I'm so happy to see it happen already with the reception that it's gotten. So congratulations on
Thank
that. To get back to the technical aspects a little bit, because this is kind of a crowd of people who are mostly filmmakers. Am I correct to what I seem to notice here is that a lot of it was done to playback, right? But then there were also some singing, I think, in the apartment. The duet that they do seemed to be sung live. So was there a mixture of those two?
Yeah,
techniques?
I mean, it was the big dance numbers we did to playback, the sort of traditional way, and then any time where we scaled things down and it was more intimate, you know, for example, Ryan and Emma at the piano, or Emma's audition at the end of the movie, we would just do it live, and just kind of, you know, try to give the actors again that room to breathe, that room to sort of, like something like the audition number at the end. It wasn't just Emma doing it live. She wasn't doing it to a prefixed, you know, pre-record or playback in, you know, that was of the backing track that was in her ear, because that's a rubato song. We wanted her to be able to set the tempo. So
was there piano playing?
Yeah,
Right.
Justin was like, you know, if there were a curtain, he'd be behind the curtain. He was like literally just off the corner of the set, you know, playing
That's
into
incredible.
a piano with an electric piano, and so she had a little bug in her ear that only she could hear. But he was listening to her in a way more than she was listening to him. That
Sure.
the idea was that she had to tell us when she was going to go from dialogue to singing. She had to tell us when, you know, what tempo she was going to take it at, what pitch. I mean, not what pitch in terms of musically, but just what emotional volume. And we had to listen to that. So you know, it's sometimes you need to kind of pre-design everything to a T and execute that, and other times you need to let the actors guide you, and I think that's true even in a musical as well as it is in a realist movie.
It worked incredibly well. Let's talk about the stage work too, because there's so much interesting art direction going on, and lighting and camera work that all worked together. It felt very exciting and fresh, but also felt like it owed its inspiration to musicals of the past. Could you speak a little bit about your approach to that and how that was accomplished?
Yeah, I had a brilliant production designer, David Wasco, who's just, I mean, he's one of the great production designers, but I think in general, but really an expert
You
on
think
LA.
about more gritty independent films from
exactly.
the 90s
Right.
and the Tarantino work.
Exactly.
And, yeah.
He did all the you know, LA set Tarantino movies. He did Collateral after that. You know, he gets LA in a way that that I think what I loved about his approach and what I wanted the approach on this movie to be, what we talked about a lot, was using real LA. You know, and even using the parts of LA other than Griffith and such, you know, that aren't necessarily glamorous, don't necessarily seem movie ready, and
but feel authentic to us Angelinos,
yeah,
who love the city,
and trying to show them in a way that's both honest and yet in this movie a little magical, you know. And so he would just add these touches. I would have him kind of. I gave him sort of ridiculous demands. Like, I loved the old lampposts that you see in Singing in the Rain. So I decided that LA in our movie should just have nothing but those lampposts. So poor David Wasco and his team had to literally carry these like lampposts on their, like, every set we would go. We shot 65 locations, you know, and every location it's like, oh yeah, where are lampposts? Right there. And they would just come in.
But you're saying it, but I felt it. I think it changed the way the film played. I mean, it's about prioritization, especially when you have limited time and resources.
Right.
And as a director, you have to decide what those rules are and what the important rules are. And something that might seem like just a detail that might not seem that important in the planning phase, when you see it in the film, it definitely, that little bit of a spin to the scene helps bring it into that nostalgic fantasy world, even though I know those locations are real and are there and are current.
Yeah.
So we're about to wind it down. I want to give you an opportunity to speak about anything, or let the audience here know anything that you think is important, or something I didn't hit on, because you're never going to get a crowd of people who are more receptive and appreciative
now the
of
pressure
what
is on.
Sorry.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess the again, given that we're speaking here at obviously about technical stuff and speaking here at the DGA, just again, I think what was hopeful to me with what I hoped about with this movie was that we would be doing things that were very difficult logistically, but that wouldn't seem difficult on screen. That to me was another ideal that the musicals of past held to, which is that you don't really see the work, but there's but I kind of think back, and I especially when it comes to Peter Cohn and Michael Bugh and my ADs and my UPMs, who just really kind of actually had to do the heavy lifting of logistically making stuff like the Traffic number or any of these musical numbers, or doing 65 locations in 40 days. Any of that stuff, making that work is to me just incredible. So I'm kind of very cognizant, especially at the DGA, that I'm sitting here, on there.
Well, let me speak on behalf of the audience and the DGA, and thanking you so much for sharing this film with us and for making it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks for listening to this DGA Q&A. Check out past episodes of the podcast by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts, or on our website at dga.org/podcast. We'll have a lot more episodes coming your way over the next several weeks, so stay tuned. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Director's Cut on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, or our SoundCloud page so you won't miss an episode. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please leave us a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks for listening, and happy holidays. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America. Music is by Dan Wally.